Welcome to our daily reflection for this Monday, June 10th. And today the gospel, Jesus gives us the Beatitudes, this very counter-cultural, counter-revolutionary agenda for those who want to follow him. And it's radical. And at the end, he talks about blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Their reward will be great. And so were the prophets persecuted, right? And so he mentions this idea, your reward will be great in heaven. Thus they persecuted the prophets before you. So Jesus is telling the Jews in his day that they have to live this radical way of living called the Beatitudes. But the Beatitudes, beatitude is a Latin word which means happiness. And what does this mean? To live these blessings, literally in the Greek, makarios, blessing, beatitude, happiness. Jesus is saying that the way to happiness is not the way that the world thinks of it. And so we have to be careful because we're in the world, and the world's thinking ends up constantly permeating our way of seeing things, our way of valuing things. And what Jesus is saying is it's not possessions, it's not fame, it's not power, it's not pleasures that are going to make us happy, right? And that's so true. Think about people who pursue pleasure. Do they become happier and happier, or more and more enslaved to their passions and to those vices and to those habits? Usually the latter, right? And so authentic freedom is paradoxical. It usually means a denying of pleasure, taking on of certain tasks and pains in order to find and fulfill the will of God and be in relationship with others. And of course, Jesus talks about, so they persecuted the prophets. And of course, that's the story we get for the first reading today, is Elijah, who's out in the wilderness on the run because he's speaking the truth to power and he has to flee from those powers. And so he ends up being fed by ravens, but he is going to be blessed are those who hunger and thirst. And yet God's going to provide for him in the end. And that's the lesson for us, that we have to live the Beatitudes, this counter-cultural way of having our values. You know, people, for example, in the world say, you should be fulfilled for yourself, save your money, save your time. And so don't have many children. And so we see the birth rate across the globe plummeting. Why? Because people have a worldly mindset, a me mindset, whereas a selfless mindset, a mindset that's directed by charity, leads us to be generous and not to hoard possessions and travel and leisure and all these things for myself. I live for others, for my children, for my family. And so I'm open to life, even though that might impoverish me a bit and take away some of the material things I would want career-wise or whatever else. And so we see that the Beatitudes are a real charge. This isn't like an idealistic thing that's pie in the sky. When Jesus gives us these Beatitudes, he's given us a set of priorities. And the priorities are towards God, towards others, towards spiritual and personal goods, not temporal material goods. And the world is aimed to, would tell you the world's Beatitudes would be about material prosperity. Jesus gives us a counter prosperity. And yet, ironically, that's the way to authentic happiness. The more the world pursues material goods, the less happy it becomes, the less free people are. And so we have to proclaim and witness to the world the good news that knowing Jesus Christ and following his way is actually the authentic way for human thriving and happiness. Let's pursue that, and let's think about how the Beatitudes are about a list of priorities and ordering. And do they order our life, or are we ordered by the world's Beatitudes? Jesus' Beatitudes versus the world's Beatitudes. Let's think about that and the contrast and how we live up to which one, right? That's the question. Which Beatitudes am I aligning my priorities in my life to? That's the question today. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.